What's going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadskii, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video, and today we're going to be going ahead and doing a showcase style video. It's not going to be a full-on showcase where we're taking on a lot of content, but I'm just taking time to show you guys some clips that I have for Shirahoshi Mansherry version 2. Unfortunately, unlucky not to get version 2 Vivi and Rebecca as well. Would like to use them as well, but you know, we got Shirahoshi Mansherry. We have a couple of clips using them as a captain. Now, this character is not a character that you would often use as a captain. This character is definitely going to see more play as a crewmate on teams comparatively as a captain, but despite that, the captain effect is still okay. So let's break down Shirahoshi first. She's a quick striker cerebral. Now, captain effect will give you a higher attack boost to your striker and cerebral units based on how much HP is left. So if you're at 100% health, you get a 3.75 boost. If you're at 1 HP, you get a 2.75 times boost. So it's a scaling factor. Now, you do get a 1.2 health boost. You get a certain recovery back at the end of the turn, depending on what tap timing you get. So if it's a perfect, you get a less recovery. If you hit a great, you get some recovery back. And if you hit a good, you get a lot of recovery back. So if you have double Shirahoshi and Mansherry, you're going to be recovering a lot of HP with this character as a captain. Now, as for Mansherry, on the other hand, he's also a striker cerebral, and she is a Psi character, and very similar. Striker cerebral, 3.75 to 2.75 scaling, health boost, and you get healing at the end of each turn depending on your tap timing. So, you know, pretty much same captain effect across the board there. However, there's switch effect. When you switch between each of these units here, they allow your crew to overheal for 1 turn, which caps out at 2 times their max. So it's essentially the same type of effect that Luffy and Sanji have. They allow you to overheal. So considering the amount of HP recovery you get with this character just by doing your tap timings, you want to be switching quite consistently if you are using this character as a captain to get as much overheal as possible, because remember, if you are overhealed, it does consider the overhealing as you being at full HP, which means you get the maximum multiplier. But on top of giving you the overhealing, which remember, this can be launched as a sub, you also get 1500 health recovery, and you reduce slot bind, special bind, bind, and despair, all by 1 turn. Phenomenal switch effect. Definitely one of the better switch effects in the game in terms of the amount of utility that it provides to your team. Now, talking about their special ability, now mine is at a 14 turn cooldown. I believe if you expand it, they get an additional cooldown reduction, but their special is going to go ahead and completely remove poison, paralysis, recovery down, and blindness, and also reduce despair and burn by 7 turns, and then changes all slots into rainbow slots. It doesn't get rid of block orbs, unfortunately, and then it gives your crew a plus 1.2 chain boost for 1 turn, which as it stands right now is the highest chain boost in the game, and then heals 50 times their recovery, and then fuses to Shirahoshi and Mansherry for 3 turns. So this is why this unit is going to see a lot of play as a crewmate. Amazing utility, rainbow slots, best chain boost in the game, amazing healing. So lots to love about this character here. And then of course, in their dual form as a captain, they're going to be again a scaling factor between 4.5 and 3.5 depending on your health for striker and cerebral characters, and they allow overhealing as a dual form, so you don't have to activate another switch effect to get the overhealing. However, with their special that heals, it won't actually overheal when you launch the special. You would have had to have swapped prior to launching their special, because the special activates and then they become the dual captain, so the healing from their special won't allow you to overheal. So that is a little bit of a downside there, but they give you lots of recovery depending on your tap timing, a lot more than their single form. So that's pretty much all the breakdown of Shirahoshi and Mansherry here. I mean, they do have hunger, which is very, very good, but hunger is very difficult to rainbow out currently. But this character is going to see a lot of play moving forward in the future as a crewmate. So that's the breakdown of the character. Let's go ahead and jump into some content. Okay, so jumping into the swing of things here, let's go ahead and get into this somewhat of a showcase video and talk about just the positives and negatives that I've found whilst using this character. So first of all, I want to touch up on the positives of this unit. What about this unit is great? Now, there actually are quite a few things I want to talk about. Obviously, I'm going to start with the captain effect and kind of work from there. So the captain effect obviously is a 3.75 at max cap just for their single form, right? And as many of you may know, I've said it in plenty of live streams and plenty of other videos of mine, that I'm really not the biggest fan of dual units, and it's because a majority of the time when you're not in their dual form, you lack a lot of damage that some of the other super type characters or some of the versus characters that we'll be seeing in the future have access to. You know, characters like the super types and the versus units having anywhere between like a 4, 4.5, 5 times multiplier, whereas, you know, a lot of the dual units are stuck at around, you know, between 3, 3.25, ranging up to like 3.75, and then Luffy Sanji obviously having access to a 4 times multiplier. Shanks crew are a little bit of an offset though, because Shanks crew have access to that really amazing switch effect that generates them an additional 50% boost per turn, so that does make a pretty big difference in the grand scheme of things, just comparing them to other dual units, right? But this unit gives you a 3.75 boost, and it's if you're at full HP. Now, of course, this unit has access to the overheal mechanic, which is such a huge benefit, because you can activate this switch effect and then get massive healing from just their tap timing alone. And if you do find a recovery slot, you can heal even more off of that, because if you hit a good, you're hitting for the best recovery boost you can get from this character. So you get the healing off a recovery slot, you get the heal off of their captain effect, and especially if you're running double Shirahoshi and Mansherry, the amount of recovery that you get is pretty absurd. You really just cannot go without talking about Shirahoshi and Mansherry without talking about the amount of HP that they can get back. Now remember, they also give you a health boost as well. So they have an HP boost, they have overhealing, and they have recovery, all in their captain effect. Obviously you talk about their captain effect in terms of their dual unit will have access to overhealing. Their switch effect will generate them that overhealing, even in their single form, right? So all of those different components together make this character an extremely powerful unit in terms of, you know, allowing you to tank hits or just having a lot of HP to play with. So the really cool thing about this unit as well is that because their switch effect generates them the ability to overheal, is that you have access to that as a crewmate. So this can be just injected into any team whatsoever to use their switch effect and then use their special to get absurd amounts of healing, so that any team can get this huge overhealing and make any team that is defensive minded or even offensively minded to get a huge HP pool to play with. Even characters that, you know, reduce their HP, and depending on how much HP you were reduced by, you multiply that by a certain value and you can get some pretty serious damage output off of that. Or you could use some other story type units like Legend Hawkins, for example, or V2 Katakuri to give you more HP to play with, tank more hits, you can overheal. Like, there's really cool things you can do with this character. Obviously in this video we're talking about more offensive style uses because we're using them as a captain effect, and, you know, more often than not you're not really going to be using this character as a captain, but, you know, like how I like to do things, I always like to use the new legend as a captain, see how they perform. And Shirahoshi and Mansherry is not a captain I'm going to be using a lot, if at all, from this moving forward, but I just wanted to show you guys anyway. Another thing about this unit that's fantastic is that this is the game's highest current chain booster, 1.2 chain boost. Now that's great because that can be stacked on top of other chain multiplicator effects, like even the Vivi and Rebecca that debuted alongside them have their amazing switch effect that gives them, I think it's a 1.25 times chain multiplier boost. So every time you hit a perfect normally, you get an increase of 0.3, that's what gets added to your chain. However, like Vivi and Rebecca's switch effect will multiply that 0.3 by 1.25, so every hit is actually getting you more chain. And then if you have a 1.2 chain booster, which makes the base chain go up by 1.2, you can see how that can kind of stack up, and even stack on other chain boosting effects, such as like V3 Law's effect to give you that chain boundary effect. Now obviously if you're using Shirahoshi and Mansherry, you're not really going to be using V3 Law as a sub on that team. However, you got to think though, V3 Law as a captain boosts striker characters, and Shirahoshi and Mansherry are a striker character, so you can run something like that. Imagine V3 Law with the amount of tankiness and healing that he gets with Shirahoshi and Mansherry, so great utility that can be added to teams like that, for example. So if you just look at it, right, you've got healing, utility, which we haven't even talked about, right? They remove a lot of different debuffs. They've got poison and recovery down, blindness, paralysis, despair. Like, they completely get rid of paralysis, which is huge. There aren't too many characters in the game that can actually do that. I know limited rare recruit Hawkins is one of those characters that is able to do that, and now we have another character that can do it. And also removing 7 turns of despair and burn is pretty nice. And we'll talk more about the negatives in a little bit, but that's not the greatest utility in the game, but it's definitely nice to have, that is for sure. And obviously generating recoveries, or not recovery slots, but rainbow slots. Now, unfortunately, they don't get rid of block orbs, which is a little bit of a bummer, right? But you also got to think is that rainbow slots are very, very broken because the enemy cannot shuffle them around and rainbow slots can be stored for multiple turns by locking your slots. And the characters that would come to mind straight away that would be really good uses of these rainbow slots, or can abuse these rainbow slots, would be something like Goldie Roger. So using Roger's captain, and then you'd have Shirahoshi Mansherry as your crewmate, so you can use Roger's super type to get rid of those block orbs that you may have had, or any other orbs that you may have had, and then you can use Shirahoshi Mansherry special to change your slots into rainbow. And like if the enemy does a reaction to that and like does some negative effect, well, Roger just blocks that because he negates any like blow away mechanics or any remove beneficial effect mechanics, because remember, you'll also get a chain boost with Shirahoshi Mansherry special. So that's just one really good synergy there. Something else you could use would be like Pero support from the Kizuna exchange. He attaches to a Cerebral unit, and if they use their special ability, he locks Cerebral character slots for 1 turn, so you can use Shirahoshi Mansherry to get your rainbow slots, and then lock those slots with the support. And then even like the Megalo ship as well, which also works because if your captain is a Psy character, the Megalo ship will give you a 1.5 times attack boost, you get a health boost, you get damage reduction. I don't think it's a health boost, but you do get damage reduction, which is the big thing there, and obviously the amazing special ability of that ship. And you're seeing here we're up against Doflamingo number 1, using a Cerebral / Striker team. This was a really obscure team. I didn't really think about it too much, just chuck some units together, and it just kind of worked, right? And of course, with the amount of healing that you get from them, it's definitely going to make a big difference there. So we've talked about a lot of their positives, but what is some of the bad things that may come into play with Shirahoshi Mansherry V2? Now, one thing that I really don't like about their captain effect is they're only centered around Striker and Cerebral. I guess you may consider it a little bit too broken if you had a captain ability like this that was a rainbow captain, but I mean, legit, any time someone brings up the argument of like, if you think something's broken because it's rainbow, like literally we have Roger. Roger is like the most broken captain in the game. Rainbow 4.5 up to 5 times. He does all those other things that we all know and love. So I don't really think it would have been a bad thing if Shirahoshi Mansherry specifically was a rainbow captain, whereas Vivi Rebecca was maybe centered around Striker Cerebral. I think that kind of makes sense, but it's fine. It is what it is, right? We can't really change things at this point. And another thing that's kind of a bad thing about Shirahoshi Mansherry is health cuts, because as we all know, health cuts are obviously depending on your health, and if you've got more HP, when a health cut hits you, you're losing more health. And because of overheal and the way that it works, is it essentially considers the overheal not a secondary health bar, it considers it an extension of your current health bar. So any HP cut that you get is going to be even more significant, and that's really going to hurt you, especially if you want to be at those high HP thresholds to ensure that you have the most HP possible to get those higher damage multipliers, specifically as a captain. Obviously, as a crewmate, it doesn't really matter that much, but HP cuts will destroy overhealing quite considerably. And we already kind of touched up on this before, but the fact that their special ability does not remove block orbs also is quite a bummer, because it means you do have to bring other characters dedicated to remove those block orbs for you, to ensure that when you use the Shirahoshi Mansherry special, that you do get those rainbow slots, which make a big difference. And then also, like, one other thing that, I mean, I guess you can, it's kind of nitpicking at this point, but something also that I kind of just noticed whilst reading the unit is that the utility that this character has may not be always useful, right? So their special ability removes, as we've already established, it gets rid of paralysis, it gets rid of poison, and it gets rid of recovery down, gets rid of blindness, and then it also gets rid of despair and burn by 7 turns. But as for the previously mentioned ones, it does completely remove them. However, as we said, some of them might not be that common, right? Like, not in every piece of content are you going to come up against poison or blindness or recovery down, for example. I do think that the best ones that they have on their kit is despair, burn, and also paralysis removal. And the fact that they do completely get rid of paralysis is probably one of the biggest draws to the unit. But then adding also 7 turns of despair and burn onto the unit as well definitely makes a big difference for sure. But you got to remember that their switch effect is absolutely phenomenal, because their switch effect not only generating you the ability to overheal, it gives you a flat 1500 heal per turn, so you can stack that up with some of the other characters. Even on this team here, we have Mihawk and Perona with their switch effect, which also generates a 1500 heal, and then you've also got their switch effect, speaking back to Shirahoshi Mansherry V2, you know, they give you the healing, they give you overhealing, they also give you that amazing main utility switch effect, which is also another reason why this character can be injected onto so many teams, because their switch ability alone gets rid of 1 turn of bind, despair, special bind, and slot bind. So all of those are quite common debuffs that you're going to be seeing in the game, and if you have a character that can use a switch effect to just remove an additional turn of that, that's gonna be a big difference, because, you know, sometimes characters only remove 4 turns of a debuff or 3 turns of a debuff, and if you can kind of mitigate some of that, that's a big difference, right? So this character is going to be able to be used on so many different teams, even on teams where they don't even get an attack boost. This character is going to be one of those units that you wish you had, and that's one of the reasons why in my tier list video I did consider them to be like a tier 1 legend, because of the fact that they can be put onto so many teams to not only give you utility and healing, but they can also give you an increased damage boost as well. As we've established, it's the best chain boost in the game, and that's kind of hard to stop, because depending on your team composition, chain boosters will be better than chain lockers, and if you have an ability to give you the chain boundary effect or an additional chain multiplicator boost on top of that, then this is going to be a pretty serious amount of damage that this unit is going to give your crew. But anyways, that's all the quick rundown of my positives and negatives and the total breakdown of Shirahoshi and Mansherry. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video today. I'm going to leave you guys with the rest of this clip against Doflamingo #1, and it was actually quite a satisfying ending at the end of this, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. And if you guys did, make sure to go ahead and hit the like button, and if you want to stay up to date with all the content that I post on my channel, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. But on that, guys, I will see you guys within the next video.
私は霊体を自在に生み出すホロホロの実の霊体